We begin here in the Middle East as the Israeli and U.S. militaries are ramping up preparations for a possible revenge attack by Iran, a strike that potentially could happen at any time. CNN's Oren Liebermann is standing by for us over at the Pentagon. But first, let's bring in CNN's Nick Robertson. He's here with me in Tel Aviv. Nick, what's the latest on a potential retaliation strike from Iran on Israel?
I think it's less optimistic than it was just a couple of days ago. Diplomats I've been talking to say that the mood music around these talks set for Thursday is not as positive and optimistic as they were hoping for. We have heard from a diplomat in the region saying that there is a likelihood that Hamas will now attend the talks. I think you're seeing a lot of posturing in the run-up to the talks. We've heard that the Iranian president today has had conversations with the British Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, the Chinese Foreign Minister, and to all of them, Iranian media is reporting he has said that Iran has the right to respond and strike back at Israel. So it's a very tough narrative on all sides at the moment, Wolf.
The people here are bracing for a worst-case scenario, the Iranians attack.
A real concern that Iran is building up for what may be more than just a limited attack, that this could be a wider strike. Of course, the U.S. naval assets coming into the region will provide protection for Israel and for U.S. troops in this region. But the fact that they've been speeded up, the fact that they've been announced, all indicates that the tensions are rising. The talks Thursday may not even happen. We might not even get there. That said, again, we have to read the machinations and the language we're hearing at the moment as the sort of thing that you hear leading up to high stakes talks where everyone's setting out their maximalist position, trying to pressure the other. There is room for diplomacy, but there's also room for mistakes and strikes.
There certainly is. Our next standby, I'm going to get back to you. Oren Liebermann, you're over at the Pentagon for us. The United States has ordered a major submarine to head to the Eastern Mediterranean. Aircraft carrier battle groups are on the way as well. This is a huge decision by the Pentagon.
Absolutely, and it is arguably the largest buildup of U.S. forces in Central Command in the Middle East that we've seen since very early in the war. In a call with his Israeli counterpart, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that he'd ordered the USS Georgia, a cruise missile submarine that was already in the Mediterranean, towards Central Command, towards the Middle East. That is an offensive weapon, although the Pentagon has described these adjustments to force posture as, quote, defensive in nature. A submarine with its land attack cruise missiles, with its anti-ship missiles, is first and foremost a message of deterrence to Iran and its proxies, but it also gives the U.S. a very powerful offensive weapon should it choose to use them, as it sees how Iran and its proxies choose to carry out this anticipated attack. Austin also ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group to accelerate its movements towards the Middle East. Just a couple of days ago, it was in the Pacific Ocean, so that will take time. But it's worth noting that Austin ordered it sped up, essentially get there as quickly as possible. And once it arrives, that means it will have the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, at least for the time being, as well as an amphibious ready group, which includes destroyers and other warships in the Mediterranean Sea. So you see that buildup. Of course, the crucial question is, what is Iran planning? What are its proxies planning? And how large will this attack be? You can see in the U.S.'s force posture changes, the U.S. is preparing for what could be a very large attack, at least the possibility of a large attack.
And Oren, I spent several years as a Pentagon correspondent. It's pretty extraordinary for the Pentagon to be announcing publicly the deployment of submarines, especially here in a sensitive area like the Eastern Mediterranean. Aircraft carrier battle groups, they announce where they're heading, but not necessarily submarines. This is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Aircraft carriers, you can track that publicly, and there are OSINT accounts that do that. Not so with submarines. The movement of U.S. submarines, whether it's a cruise missile sub, a fast attack sub, a ballistic missile sub, these are very secret and nearly always done not publicly. They're rarely ever announced, and if they are, that in and of itself is a message. The U.S. publicly saying that the USS Georgia is headed to the region, that's very public signaling to Iran and its proxies that the U.S. effectively means business here, that the U.S. has very powerful forces in the region, and depending on what Iran chooses to do, the U.S. retains the option to use them. Wolf, it's worth noting this is not the first time we have seen the U.S. publicly announce the movement of a submarine during this war. Back in November, in early November, the U.S. very publicly moved the USS Florida, another cruise missile submarine, into the Middle East. Again, that then was a warning to Iran and its proxies about what they should choose to do. This is that same message delivered with a tremendous amount of other U.S. forces in the region as well.
Yeah, the public announcement of these submarines, where they're heading, it's a message to Iran. Clearly, you mess with Israel, the United States is going to mess with you. That's the message that's being delivered clearly. Oren, thank you very much. Nick, thanks to you as well. I want to get some analysis right now. Joining us, CNN political and global affairs analyst Barak Ravid, along with CNN military analyst, retired U.S. Army Major General James Spider Marks. Let's talk a little bit, Barak. First of all, you've been doing amazing reporting on what's going on. What are you hearing right now about the timing and preparations for a possible Iranian attack on Israel?
Good evening, Wolf. So several things. First, what I heard just in the last hour from at least 4 sources, 2 of them U.S. officials and 2 of them Israeli officials, the assessment is that this is not happening tonight. That's what I heard from both sides. They think it might happen tomorrow, it might happen the day after, but it is not happening tonight. Another sign for that, President Biden's top Middle East advisor, Brett McGurk, is traveling to the region tonight, to Cairo, to start working or to continue working on the hostage deal, on the Gaza hostage deal. So the U.S. is trying to say by that, business as usual, plans as usual, they're moving forward. And the next thing is that what I hear from both U.S. and Israeli officials is that they see 2 things. First, with Hezbollah, they see that Hezbollah's weapon systems, long-range missiles, are ready to fire at any minute. Once Nasrallah will give the order, they can fire. On the Iranian side, extensive and significant steps on the ground in the drone units, in the missile units, for a possible attack on Israel.
Yeah, people are really worried about all of this. General Marks, give us your analysis of the U.S. move to send this missile-guided submarine and to speed up the arrival of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier battle group to the region, to the eastern Mediterranean, right near where I am right now.
I think it's a very wise move on the part of our Department of Defense to try to get another carrier strike group into the region to make sure that that capability has now doubled in size and capacity. The announcement of a sub movement, I think, is unnecessary. When you have a carrier strike group, you have submarines that are a part of that carrier strike group. The additional announcement, I understand it sends a strong message, but that's out of the norm. What we should try to do is simply move the capacity in there, and then we've got a very broad array of capabilities from which to choose in terms of what type of a response we want to try to make. And I think what's important at this point is if those carrier strike groups or any element within those are under attack or get in the way of what Iran tries to do, the United States then has a choice to make in terms of how it wants to try to respond very directly. Is it just in support to help defend Israel, or is it to go after those capabilities that the Iranians or their proxies might use to harm the United States capabilities as well?
And that offensive potential military capability is very, very impressive indeed. Barak, how much would a possible Iranian retaliation undermine Thursday's scheduled ceasefire talks that are supposed to take place either in Cairo or Doha, Qatar?
Well, first, the talks, as far as I understand, are expected to take place in Doha. This is still the plan. At least the U.S. and Israel and the Qatari and Egyptian mediators all still say that they're going to be there on Thursday. But there's Hamas, and Hamas announced that they don't want another round of negotiations. And one of the interpretations of this statement is that Hamas and its leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, in the bunker 100 feet under the ground in Gaza, is waiting for this Iranian attack and for a Hezbollah attack, hoping that after such an attack he can get better terms for the deal. So the possibility of an Iranian attack, of an attack by Hezbollah, will influence the talks in any case. So I think this is those 2 things are intertwined.